So one of the most unique tools in Illustrator is a gradient mesh. It allows me to create very specific gradients within a shape using a grid rather than just using the gradient tool. So I can create a rectangle and apply a gradient mesh, going to Object and Create Gradient Mesh. Then I'm given a dialog, if I set to default, to customize a few things. I can change the rows and columns, and you see when I change that, then they'll automatically update if preview is checked. I can change the columns, so I want 5 columns, and this is the mesh of the grid that I have on my object. And I'll add my own colors in a minute, but if you see the appearance, you can click on to center, and this is the highlight right here. And so this will automatically apply a gradient if you select something like that. Say on this I only want 2 rows and 2 columns. And if I select OK, then the mesh will apply to the shape. And I can give different anchor points their own color by selecting them. So if I use a direct selection tool, and I select these anchor points, then I can give them their own color. So you can see just like that they added a color, but this center anchor point has been given a white color. I can change it to black, or say in this case I want it like a blue. And so you can really have a lot of flexibility and give any of the anchor points whatever color you want. So I selected these, and I can make them, say I want these red on that side. And so it's really fun, some of the different things that you can do. Now you can use this for any shape you want. However, since it's based on a square grid, it's easiest to use it with square shapes. But as you can see, here I have a shape right here that I've made. And if I apply a gradient mesh to that, then Illustrator will just guess where to kind of fit the mesh of the gradient. So I'm going to have 3 rows right there, say, and I'm going to just make it flat. And then when I'm changing these anchor points, I can give them a different color. And it's going to automatically kind of guess based on the different anchor points and the shape that I have. So it's still really fun, but what I generally do in situations like that is I generally want a more specific shape. And so I'm going to use the transparency tool and transparency masks. So what these are is like a clipping mask in Photoshop, if you've used that. All I need to do is grab the artwork that I want to use as the base color and go into the transparency panel, or you can go to Window and add the transparency panel. So once it shows up, then I can click Make Mask, and what you can see is it created a layer mask to the side of it, and by default it's hidden. And so if I want to show something, I can grab that logo I had before. I'm going to make that just a little bit smaller. And then I remember that shape is right here. And what you need to do is go into the mask by clicking on the layer mask right here. And then you can paste that shape in. And what you want to do is make sure the shape is white where you want it to show up. And so now, as long as if I go to hit Control or Command Y, I can go to Outline View and see where everything is. So that's where that is. And then you can create different gradients within a shape. And then I'll click on the opposite shape to exit from the transparency mode. And there you have it, is your gradient mesh with a shape built over it. And now if I create something else in the background, you can see that it bleeds through and it's transparent in the background. And so I really love using meshes also for distorting shapes. And usually I use this for text or illustrations. But even for something like this, I can go into Object, and then in the Envelope Distort is where you can distort different ways. And so I'll usually hit like Make with Mesh, and then it will create a new set of mesh. So I'll hit 2 on 3 on each one, and as long as I hit Preview, is going to show me a new mesh. And this is where I can distort to this. And it doesn't matter what shape you have for something like this, because it's always going to base it around a square grid around it. And then all I have to do is select the anchors, and I can move them any way I want to, which is going to distort the mesh, as you can see. And it's always going to constrain it to these different anchor points, which I have set. And you can twist it around. So it's really kind of fun, the things you can do with that. And once you're happy with what you have with this, you can see it's always editable. I can double click it and go to the original shape. Say I want to change some of these colors around. Maybe I want orange on that side. I want this whole side orange. Then you can still change it. And if I double click out of the isolation mode, then I still have my gradient mesh that I can, one way you can switch back and forth is up here is you can edit the envelope, and this is going to edit your original shape. So I'll go to edit the envelope, and I can still change it around. Now, oftentimes with the envelope distort with a mesh, it's kind of difficult to be accurate with your shapes and things like that. Sometimes you have a specific shape in mind, say for text oftentimes. And so what I'll do, say I've got some text I've made, and say I want to make this a little bit wavy. What I'll do is I'm going to create a path or an object I want it to constrain to. Say I have this path. And generally I want it to be about the same size as the text so it doesn't get distorted in an unusual way. And so once I feel like I've got it to the point where I like it, I'll match it up, make sure it's about the same size, and I think that is. And then I'm going to expand this shape. And so now it's a perfect shape that I want. I'll bring it to the front. And then you select both objects. I made sure this was on the front. And then Object, Envelope Distort, and Make with Top Object. And now it's going to wrap that object, in this case the text, to that box. But it still keeps it non-destructive. So if I double click into this, I can still change the text around. And then if I go up here to edit the envelope, then I can still change it around. Now I do also want to mention, as we went with in the Pathfinder tool, say I could create a square. You can use the Effects menu and also create some distortion effects, and this still keeps things non-destructive. So I like to use a free distort a lot of the time because I can easily set things into perspective, and this is going to give me an idea of what it'll look like. Say I want to make it a little bit distorted right there. Hit OK, and what it's going to do is put that shape into a distorted object. And with all these things, if I like how they are, all I have to do is hit Object, Expand, and it gives me my options. And then it's going to expand those as a solid object. But as I have mentioned with other things, you can't go back once you've done something like that, once you've expanded it. And so that is destructive. So I really love these tools. You can do so much with them, and there's a lot of flexibility and fun you can have with doing things like this.